Good morning, Mr. Carl.
Good morning, Kiran.
Thank you very much for being here with us today, and thank you very, very much for accepting this invitation and coming here. Number one, accepting to be here in this podcast and also to talk about a very important theme on which we are going to organize a conference on. So this time around, let me tell everybody that Mr. Carl Lander is one of our keynotes for the upcoming International Conference on Education. The conference theme this time around is a very interesting one. We are going to talk about the education revolution that is taking place across the globe, and specifically the transition from Gen Z to Gen Alpha. As Carl is an expert in the field, and he has got an immense experience, not only working in one particular country, but across the globe. So we thought that he's going to be the best fit to talk about how this transition is taking place. So just to share with you all some of the glimpses and also to give you an idea of what Carl is going to talk about, we invited him for this very, very interesting podcast. At least I'm looking forward to it. So let's quickly come to Carl. So Carl, I would like to know from you, from your experience as currently as a principal and of course as an educationist, how do you see this transition? How do you see Gen Alpha, Gen Z, which was earlier them, and now the transition that is taking place from here to there in education, specifically in the 21st century?
Yeah. Well, first off, thank you for inviting me, Kiran. It's nice to be here.
You're welcome.
And it's an exciting point in history, particularly in education, because we're coming against, we've made some huge leap forwards as culture, as society, and now as educators we need to catch up with that. Perhaps as an example to highlight Gen A and a little bit Gen Z. So you're walking on a student at home and they're sat on their end of the bed and they've got a PlayStation controller and there's lots of buttons on it. Mm-hmm. So you've got these two fingers doing this, mm-hmm. and they're working left, right, and up and down, and they're jumping. And then you've got these fingers that are controlling whatever it is they're doing. And they're now looking at a screen, so they've got visual information, and it's not slow visual information. These are fast-paced games. And so they're controlling it with their hands, so they've got their tactile learning going on, they've got the visual learning going on. And then if you look closely, they've all got headphones on and they're talking with people from around the world, their friends that are also playing the game and having random chats. So they're talking, visually doing things, and their hands are working a million miles an hour. And those same children that are used to that level of input was sitting down in a classroom and saying, open up to page 36 and answer questions. And then as teachers, we sit back and go, the children don't seem very engaged. They're bored. They're misbehaving. And so it's that key that our teaching style needs to change a little bit just to reflect that the children come from a different world.
So true.
And I think that there's a really good quote. I'm going to paraphrase here, so I apologise to anyone if I get it wrong. If you teach as we were taught, so if you teach, I need to get this right, if you teach today the way we were taught yesterday, then you destroy tomorrow, because the world has moved on. And, in classrooms as teachers, I think we're all guilty of this. You plan your work out, you plan your curriculum, you're delivering it year on year, and we're very, very apprehensive to suddenly renew all our resources because it took so much hard work to get, and especially in recent times. So when I look back, and perhaps we discuss millennials, we moved from teaching from textbooks to having the smart board and it being PowerPoints, and then we moved to interactive learning, and those smart boards became smart screens that are interactive, and now we're at a stage where the children are sat and they want more. And I had some good words said to me the other day by a teacher, and he said we need to take the technology off the wall where they're looking at it because it's becoming didactic. It's and we put it in the hands of the students. So the teacher should be casting whatever's on their pad or tablet straight to the students who are working, creating. And that's a level of technology. And unfortunately, in a number of classrooms that I've visited over the last 5 or 6 years, it's a very traditional style of teaching, and it's still, lamentably so, it's still didactic, it's still lecture-led, which is great if you're looking at maybe adult learners and you're focusing on andragogy and they're responsible learners. But these are children. And they're children that are used to visual, auditory,
all the senses
tactile,
of the work,
all's going into their brain. And we're not quite there delivering it yet. So as my colleagues said, the technology needs to come into their hands, and as a teacher we need to perhaps change, and we're not the font of knowledge. We become a facilitator.
So true.
I mean, you've probably seen one of these magic things before. So it's a mobile phone, but on that mobile phone I've got access to more chemical knowledge than any textbook in the world, and it's got more answers and more knowledge than anyone could hope to assimilate in one lifetime. So our questions have to be, as a teacher, are we just teaching them the knowledge, or are we going to embrace the technology and say to the kids, right, it's not about what you know, it's how you access information, how you problem solve. And I think thankfully recently the artificial intelligence has solved a lot of these dilemmas for us, because we can sit on the fence, but now AI is there, and
it does everything for you.
Yeah, and exam boards are now realising it. So exams and assessment centres are sort of saying, well, what do we assess the children on? And that's where we look at what the universities want. So the universities want awesome emotional skills because they need to work. Another quote is relationships. We're all humans. So they need to work and problem solve. They need to critical think. They need to imagine and create and design a process and see that achieved to its objective. And work with a myriad of people, all with different backgrounds. And as schools, that's what we need to prepare our kids for. And that idea of, can you memorise the periodic table? Can you memorise the 14 formula you need to pass your O-level physics? Is that really what's needed with these sort of things available? So teaching's got a lot to catch up on, but I'm really pleased to see that we're having those conversations. You know, the conference is about those conversations. Universities have now realised it, and they're demanding that children have those skills, which means that schools have to deliver. So it's a slow process because education moves slowly, but there is change afoot. And for me, it's probably the most exciting point in education's history, where we're on that cusp of changing how we teach. I think in our discussions before, you talked about the classroom not being a closed classroom anymore. It's a classroom without walls. And thanks to COVID, that there's lots of negative things that happen with COVID about socialising and children that schools are ideally placed to solve.
But it has opened so many new avenues for us to explore and to learn from.
Yes,
right?
yeah.
So the world has changed post-COVID, I believe.
Yeah.
And there's one more thing, Mr. Kaul, when you were actually sharing your thoughts, very interesting. I was literally engrossed in that. So multiple questions were popping in my mind. So one particular thing when we talk about children, specifically children in the school, and we do understand that they're humans and they need that nurturing that we're looking for. So for me, as an education, there are 5 fundamental domains in which we nurture the children.
Yeah.
The knowledge, attitudes, dispositions, values, and skills.
Yeah.
Right? So the school generally is that social institution that gives them all of those exposures in all of these domains. So somewhere or the other, one conversation or one debate, I would say, which is going on in the masses and of course in the teachers' fraternity, is that if everything is to be done through technology, how would we work on these 5 fundamental domains that develops a child into, a more mature, sensible individual?
Yeah.
So what do you think about that?
So there's lots of challenges, but I suppose it depends how you view the technology. For me, it's a tool. So the fact that I need you to work with 3 of your colleagues to solve a problem I'm going to give you, the technology is a tool for you to do that. So you can use your phone to investigate, you'll use your laptops to create the presentation and the report. But the core skills I'm trying to get across to that group is how they bond together, how each individual fulfills a role and understands their role within that group to help the others. Those are all, traditionally we used to call them soft skills.
Yeah, we used to.
But they're becoming the core of education. And so those core skills that the teacher is responsible in nurturing and delivering, facilitating, haven't changed. We used to do them back even in the old days at school when you open your textbook up. This is back in the 80s. But we'd still do group work. Your science lab is still doing group work. So we would develop those skills, but now the focus is on those skills. And that, for me, I think that's where it's changed. And the fact that we're using the technology is not a fear for a teacher. It's just, it's just another tool in our toolkit that we can use to extract it. They're still using their phones and their laptops and their tablets and any other smart device. But as a teacher, we're still communicating with them. We're still trying to nurture it. We're still trying to get them to work together. We're trying to guide and facilitate them down the correct route. We're breaking down their project into the introduction, where they're going to find out about their research, and then they're going to be analysing the research, and then they're performing an evaluation, and then they're trying to apply everything they've done to solve the problem that you've given them. So that fundamental core of the teaching doesn't change. And for me, I know in the UK they've introduced AI classrooms, which is quite the first. And I know in Italy they've made it part of the national curriculum now, that AI is embedded in it. However, for me, you will never ever replace the teacher, because that's the human side of it.
That's the human element.
And as much as we facilitate it, you need the teacher. And I think to a large degree, going back to COVID, it taught us that. So before COVID, it was a struggle getting teachers to update their skills. After COVID, what teacher doesn't use Google Classroom, or what teacher isn't on Teams? So the teachers now have those skills and realise that it's not about hiding behind them and it's just putting them on screen and being a remote person. That there's still that interaction, that face-to-face, that nurturing. But the teacher, instead of being now at the front of the classroom where all the children are looking up as if there's some form of light and grail of knowledge, the teacher is now sat with the children,
and
facilitating and doing it with them.
Yeah. So teacher has become a part of the learning process now. So I think somewhere or the other, that fear which the teachers had, the teachers teaching will be an extinct profession. I don't think it's there anymore. It's just that we need to now find ways of integrating our skills into the existing. Now another question that again from your conversation only, we did have this conversation earlier as well, but now I would like you to slightly shed more light on that. The social digital divide leading to the social digital equilibrium. How can we have that in our classrooms?
Isn't it frightening that the more technology we have, so the more connections we have with each other, actually children are becoming more isolated.
They are. See, they're digitally connected, but socially they're isolated. They're all in their own solitudes.
And this is a little bit of a worry for me. So recently I'm chair of Synergy, which is the community group of schools in Karachi, the Cambridge schools in Karachi. We housed a art competition, and all the children from across all the different schools sent in their artwork. And normally when you do such competitions, the judges sit down and there's beautiful artwork that is of different styles, and the themes, there's a mixture. There's some dark, there's some comedy, there's some social commentary. There's generally a mixture. And in the recent gallery exposition we had, there wasn't a mixture. It was all quite fearful and dark. So if I can describe some of the artwork to you, that a young artist had drawn a picture of a mobile phone with the social media icons on, and inside that mobile phone was the image of her trying to get out of the phone, and it was entitled Trapped. There was almost I would say 80% of the artwork was about fear, entrapment, solitude, alone, unable to meet the expectations. So on social media, we're connected, you're right, as you say, we're all very connected, but at the same time, we're connected through what is a facade. We're smiling and we're happy and we're having a great time.
But deep inside, it's all dark.
We're not. And for me, that divide is a real issue, because what I got from that art gallery exposition was that children are being deeply affected by these digital tools, and they feel as though they don't have control of them. But on the facade, they're never going to say in front of their friends on social media that it's a bad thing, that they want as many likes and posts up as possible. So what can we do about that divide? This is where the teacher in the classroom comes back into it. That there is a call. So if we all agree that the smart technology is a tool the teacher's using, but you don't use the same tool all the time. So the teacher can sit with them and it can go back to being verbal. It can be slightly didactic. It can be the teacher leading conversations in a more Socratic method. But but the teacher there face to face is what's bringing the group together. So a tool, digital use of the tools for group work is brilliant, but there's nothing wrong sometimes with just putting them aside and channeling that importance of teamwork and leadership and developing social relationships and critical thinking without the need for technology.
True.
There was a recent study done by the UN, and I was privileged enough to sit down with the ministers of Suriname who'd just come out of it. And Suriname is a developing country. They simply do not have the digital resources that perhaps many take for granted. And they'd analysed all the OECD data and all the UN data from countries who have classrooms that are purely digital and countries that have access to phenomenal resources, whether they be tablets or interactive computer tables. And they looked at the world's PISA results. And do you know what it said?
Yeah.
It said conclusively that the digital technology did not provide any more advantage. It's a tool to teaching that can help a child learn, but without it, it's not the end of the world, because countries like Suriname and countries in Africa were performing as well in the tests, having not had access to an Apple as any other country. And so it's a great tool to use with the students, and the revolution is here. But it's not the be-all and end-all of education. And that goes back to what we said a moment ago, that you can't take the teacher out of that equation. The teacher, whether it's in Africa, whether it's in Suriname, whether it's here in Pakistan, the teacher is at the centre of the educational experience.
So true. This can only be done if you're more in a formal setting where we have leadership who understands this entire notion, who understands how to bridge this gap between digital and the social divide.
Yeah.
But you see, specifically for those parents, for those communities who are now getting into homeschooling,
Yeah.
right? People who are into accelerated learning programs, people who are now moving from formal to non-formal classrooms,
Yeah.
right? People who are moving on from location-free classrooms
Yeah.
or learning. How do you see bridging the gap there?
Yeah, it's a tough question, and obviously I've come across many parents that would choose to homeschool. As they see access to the internet and paying for paid services online is the way forward. And that's good if the objective of education is to get a pretty piece of paper, and your whole drive is to be coached and to cram in order to pass an exam to get a pretty piece of paper. And that works for applying to a university, for example, here in Pakistan, where you'll do an entrance test. And it's 100% on that entrance test, whether you get in or not. And your learning is just based on that. So maybe you're right, that if that's the objective of education, then they can be at home and they can learn, and it's not a problem.
Yeah.
But for me, the objective of education is to prepare the generation for the challenges that they will face.
True.
And no amounts of pieces of paper are going to do that. You need them in the classroom. So our latest is are those websites, are those pages that you're accessing, are they valid? Is it a valid? Are they making a point of value, or is it? I think they call it false news now.
Yeah.
So is it false news? So in a group, you can have that conversation, you can have that discussion. We can begin the evaluation process. The teacher can guide it, and we're doing that as face-to-face. I'm not sure that could be done online. Yes, you could have a Zoom or a team meeting, and you can all discuss it, but you're removed from each other. And as education, as HE moves further towards those soft skills that we talked about, so we need to develop them more, and that's only going to happen face to face, because we're saying they're soft skills. We're saying the human part. AI's got the knowledge and memory covered.
Everything.
But the human part, well, for that we need human contact.
True.
And I understand parents. My own son in his second year of university during COVID sort of questioned me. He said, "Dad, what's the point in going to university? I can just stay home and do it in his pajamas, nice and comfortable."
Yeah.
And then I look back to my time at university, and I'm saying, well, what did I miss? okay, what did we do? Well, the first year of university, and don't do this, by the way, the first year of university was just out,
meeting
friends,
people,
meetings,
friends,
social,
parties,
exactly.
social gatherings, committees,
and
groups.
developing all those soft skills that we
True.
don't have.
Yeah, true,
And then, okay, we started to work more and more, and then I did work very, very hard later on. But
that first year camaraderie really works,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and it's your lifetime friends
Yeah.
that you make in the first year of your university.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas COVID stripped that, and it meant that the students were just online, and genuinely, because they didn't have any of that other socialization, what was the point of HE? And that's really interesting that 1 in 4 UK universities are on the brink of bankruptcy. And their affiliating body, the group that oversees all of the universities, they've put by £6 million for insolvency proceedings to cover them. So for a group, an organisation that oversees higher education in the UK, to say, there's £6 million, now no one likes to give £6 million away, they know this is serious, and they're questioning the role of universities. But this comes back to your point of, well, what is the role? And that socialisation is becoming key. And we're better placed to do it than the art classroom. We're better placed to do it than the football field or the school playground. So for me, that's why
we all need
schools
to be with one another to learn, to grow together, and also to get the skills that we need to live in a better society, right?
Yeah.
We are humans,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Just the last part, Carl, I think this is such an interesting conversation. I don't want it to end, but I want to reserve something for your keynote.
Yeah.
So what are you going to talk about? I just want you to let the audience know of your major key areas that you're going to talk about in the conference with the participants who are coming in.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of what we'll be discussing at the conference will be related to what we're discussing here today. And that's what are the changes that we're facing in education. So I'll just drop a teaser. Many of you, I'm sure, were aware that over the summer when Cambridge conducted their exams, an exam paper was leaked from Islamabad, which was terrible. And of course, that exam paper is largely based on memory and knowledge based, because that's what the children are doing. So if you take away that assessment, what does the teacher have? What does the school have to say that child has performed? There's no other evidence. And uniquely, that was affecting some schools, not all. So some IB schools around the world, when AI came in, whilst we as a teaching organisation are in a panic, oh crikey, they can use AI, what are we going to do? How can we stop them cheating? The IB said, okay, use AI.
Oh.
Use it. Yeah. Well, because in the IB, you're evaluating the child
True.
over a series of
Yeah.
parameters. So
there's so much of project, inquiry. There's too much of independent learning.
So if I was to simplify it down to the UNESCO 4 pillars of assessment, so you've got to know. The knowledge part, which is the traditional stuff we do. Then you've got the to do, which is the applied part.
Fair enough.
Can the children do it? Yeah.
Situation.
Then we've got the to decide. Are they making the correct decisions? The working in the group.
Critical thinking comes in there.
Yeah. And then the final one is the to be, which is my attitude to the learning, the choices I'm making.
Right.
And so if you take on these assessments and you say, well, there's 4 assessments. Oh, you can't do one because AI's here. But that's okay. I've got 3 assessments. The integrity of what I'm assessing the child hasn't changed. I've just recognise that AI can do the memory bit. Whereas in other schools, we sort of panicked over it, and if we take away the knowledge and the memory tests, what else are we left with? And the reality is, under many examination boards, nothing. And so we'll perhaps talk a little bit about that and what we as teachers are going to do. What are we going to assess? If we don't have to assess knowledge because the child can access it, what is it we're assessing in the school? So hopefully we can be talking a little bit about that, and how you assess a Gen A, a Gen Z.
True.
How you're going to do it. These are people with so many skills and abilities beyond those of our own that actually we're disadvantaging them because we're trying to teach them and expecting them to learn the way we did.
True.
and time's moved
True,
on.
true,
And
true. And it's a very intelligent group of people who are coming to us.
yeah, much more versatile.
Much versatile, much dynamic, much open to ideas.
Yeah.
The world is in their fingers, and we are trying to tame them the way we want.
Yeah.
Right.
Sorry, and I just
one more thing.
one more taster is also the effect of that. So as a child on the primary school playground way back, I didn't have access to anything like the information that our young primary school teachers students have today, and their exposure to the world of media, to pop, is something we never had. So they're coming through the school with many, many more different needs. It's not that they're more mature, they're still the same 13-year-olds we were, but they have a very different life experience, and they've been exposed to all sorts of life that we didn't get exposed to. So as teachers, in our classroom, we now have to deal with that.
True.
And we need the skills to deal with it.
Agreed.
Because, me at a 13-year-old, we talked about horror movies on the playground, never seen them.
Never seen them.
That the idea of cussing or the sexualization of a group of people or some of the horrific things that are on the internet, we never had any idea of it. Whereas now, 6-year-olds, it's there.
They're so aware of everything.
Yeah.
They know they can talk better than us.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
come up with solutions. They come up with suggestions. They come up with alternative ways
Yeah.
of reaching out to a problem. And they're so confident in bringing those. And we have to, as teachers, cater them in the classroom.
Yeah.
This is something really interesting
Yeah.
that we all need to learn now.
So and it's what we
Yeah.
do, and don't come to the conference if you're going to think I'm giving answers, because I've not got any answers at all. I've got some ideas and some questions, but hopefully together we can ask them at the conference, and we can go away and reflect and think, and hopefully together as a community we'll be able to solve some of these issues.
Thank you, Carl. I think this was a wonderful conversation, and you have set the tone now for the
Okay.
conference. So, Carl is not the only one. Everybody whosoever is joining us in the conference, Carl is one of the speakers, and you've got the flavor of what he's going to talk about. I think Carl has really touched upon the real notion of what we are going to talk about: how to cater, how to meet the needs of Gen Z and Gen Alpha who are there, and specifically from the academia, people from the education sector, and specifically teachers. We will be learning a lot of ideas. So please mark your calendars, everybody. The conference is 7th and 8th of December. The conference plan will also be available, and we really look forward to having you. This time around, the conference has a number of exciting activities, not only the keynotes. One idea is just shared with you to give you all a little teaser of what we are going to do about. But other than the keynotes, we have a lot of plenaries, learning circles, we have the PhD symposium, we have the action research fest, and of course we have the paper presentations and workshops for teachers and researchers, and a lot of interaction with people from across the globe. So looking forward to everyone. Thank you very much, Carl, once again for being here, taking time, talking about the idea, and letting the audience know of what and how we academicians and educationists are thinking of Gen Z.
Thank you for inviting me, and I look forward to seeing everybody there on the 7th and 8th of December.